Okay, let's kick things off with something that's, well, really making headlines globally. The United States has put a temporary pause on some critical weapons aid to Ukraine.
Yeah, and we're not talking about just anything. It's precision munitions, air defense interceptors.
Exactly, the things Ukraine relies on heavily, right, to deal with all those Russian drones and missiles.
Precisely. And the reason given is, well, it's kind of surprising.
Pentagon sources are saying U.S. stockpiles are hitting sensitive levels. That's the term they're using.
It definitely raises immediate questions, especially given, how intense things are right now. So for today's deep dive, we're going to sift through all the sources you've sent us, the articles, the research notes.
Right. Try and make sense of this pretty significant decision and its knock-on effects.
Our mission, as always, is to pull out those key nuggets of insight, give you that shortcut to being really well informed.
And hopefully have a little bit of fun along the way, maybe some surprising facts too.
Absolutely, because this isn't just about the immediate battlefield impact in Ukraine, although we'll touch on that.
Yeah, we have to mention the unverified Russian MOD claims about Ukrainian losses. Sumy, Kyiv, other areas.
Right, and their claims about shooting down, 131 Ukrainian drones and some U.S. JDAM.
7 JDAM smart bombs, yeah. Precision-guided ones.
Right.
But again, those are Russian claims. Need to take them with caution.
Of course. But we really want to explore the wider ripples, like Ukraine's urgent appeals to Washington.
And NATO's reaction, Mark Rutte, acknowledging the U.S. concerns, but stressing Ukraine's immediate, desperate needs.
Then there's the Kremlin's reaction, predictably welcoming it, saying it'll speed up the end of the conflict.
We'll look at what analysts like Jack Whitling from USI are saying about the actual cost for Ukraine strategically.
And then, zooming out a bit, there's this really fascinating development in Europe.
Oh yeah, the new Germany-UK Defense Pact, set to be signed very soon, July 17th.
With a mutual assistance clause, which is quite significant, feels like a step towards maybe less reliance on the U.S.
A definite strategic shift. And speaking of shifts, how about Macron talking to Putin again after 3 years?
That was unexpected. Focused on the Iran nuclear crisis, Iran pulling back cooperation with the IAEA.
And France apparently willing to discuss Iran's right to enrich uranium domestically. That's a big diplomatic move.
It really is. And then we'll shift again, look at some complex, often missed, regional situations.
Right, the internal power struggles in Gaza. Hamas issuing an ultimatum to a Bedouin clan leader, Irabu Shapa.
And the clan firing back, accusing Hamas of using violence against them.
Plus, the latest out of Mali, the army claiming a major counterattack against militants.
The al-Qaeda affiliate JNIM, yeah. After those coordinated attacks across several cities, shows the ongoing struggle in the Sahel.
It's a lot to cover, a complex picture.
It is, but our goal here is to connect those dots for you, cut through the noise, and give you some real clarity.
Okay, so let's start back with that U.S. decision, the pause on aid. Sources are saying it's directly tied to worries about U.S. stockpiles.
Yeah, those sensitive levels. It's like they're looking at their own shelves and thinking, hang on a minute.
And the type of aid paused is crucial here, isn't it?
Absolutely. Precision munitions, air defense. These are Ukraine's main tools against Russia's air attacks, especially on cities.
So this isn't just a general slowing down. It hits a specific critical capability.
Right. It impacts their immediate ability to defend themselves from the air and hit Russian targets accurately. And, beyond the battlefield tactics, this U.S. move might just push European countries faster towards, sorting out their own defense readiness.
More self-reliance, even within NATO.
Potentially, yeah. Accelerating trends may be already underway.
And Ukraine's reaction. Pretty much immediate and quite forceful.
Understandably. Their foreign ministry called in the acting U.S. representative in Kyiv.
Their message was blunt, wasn't it? Any hesitation just encourages Russia.
Basically, yeah. It pushes peace further away, in their view. Which highlights this difficult balance, right?
Between supporting an ally in a desperate fight and maintaining your own military readiness.
Exactly. NATO's Mark Rutte kind of touched on that. He acknowledged the U.S. concerns about their arsenals.
But he also stressed, look, in the short term, Ukraine just can't afford any drop in support, especially munitions and air defense.
Especially now with Russia making these gains in the east, we've seen for weeks.
The Pentagon says options are being looked at, ways to keep support flowing while preserving U.S. readiness.
It's worth remembering, shipments were paused briefly before, back in February, then longer in March. No new official policy announced since then, though.
And Moscow's reaction. No surprises there.
Nope. The Kremlin called the suspension welcome. Their line is, the less weapons sent, the faster this ends.
Which is their spin, obviously. framing it as a win for them.
Of course. And analysts like Jack Whitling at RSI, he points out the direct military impact.
Suspending precision stuff limits Ukraine hitting targets deep behind Russian lines.
Exactly. He said it flat out. This will cost territory and capacity of response for Ukraine. It's an operational hit.
Meanwhile, the Russian Mahdi is putting out its battlefield reports. Claims of advances in the north, Sumy, Kyiv.
And claims of hitting lots of Ukrainian equipment, depots, the usual stuff.
And on the air defense side, they claim intercepting 131 Ukrainian drones and those 7 U.S. JDAMs.
But as you said, host speaker, these are official Russian government claims, unverified independently. Always need that grain of salt.
Absolutely. Okay, let's pivot from the immediate conflict because this situation seems to be prompting wider shifts.
Definitely. Look at Europe. Germany and the UK signing this new defense treaty on July 17th.
And that mutual assistance clause is the really symbolic part, right? A threat to one is a threat to the other.
It feels like a very clear step, maybe driven partly by concerns about future U.S. commitment, less dependence?
Could be. The talks started back in August 2024, aiming for a broad treaty defense economy.
It shows Europe is, well, getting serious about its own strategic autonomy.
What's interesting is how this kind of pact subtly changes the security map inside Europe.
It's not just about relying less on the U.S. It could be forging a new proactive defense corps within Europe itself, maybe setting a pattern.
Sources say the text is basically done.
Seems like it. The German Foreign Ministry confirmed it's in the final stages. Cabinet approval expected soon.
The British government hasn't commented officially yet, though.
True, but it still signals this strategic realignment. European powers looking to strengthen their own collective security.
Okay, so while Europe is building these internal bonds, we're also seeing some unexpected diplomatic outreach.
Like Macron and Putin talking on the phone again, first time in 3 years since the war started.
And the trigger was Iran.
Yes, the escalating crisis there. French sources say Macron called Putin after Tehran announced it was ending all cooperation with the IAEA.
Kicking out the UN inspectors entirely.
Right. Iran's reasoning is that the IAEA didn't condemn Israeli attacks on its facilities, which Tehran calls a violation of non-proliferation.
So Macron felt it was time to talk to Moscow again, maybe feeling like there was a diplomatic vacuum.
That seems to be part of it. A sense in Paris that without talking to Putin, the door was wide open for Moscow and Tehran to get even closer, which complicates things.
And the outcome of the call.
Well, French sources said Macron felt a bit more positive afterwards, about the possibility of Moscow maybe pressuring Iran to cooperate with the IAEA again.
And this point about France being willing to discuss Iran's right to enrich uranium domestically, that's quite nuanced.
It is. It acknowledges part of the 2015 deal, but the absolute bottom line remains. Iran cannot, under any circumstances, acquire a nuclear weapon.
It's a tricky balancing act. Germany's reaction was less optimistic, right? Calling Iran's break with the IAEA a disastrous signal.
And the French Chancellor, Le Drian, he called for Tehran to cooperate, but also noted Israeli attacks aren't helping, saying they're not in line with international law.
He stressed only a political deal offers a real solution, not just bombing campaigns.
And he also pushed for resuming U.S.-Iran talks, but crucially insisted European security interests have to be considered, warning about Iranian missile reach.
What did the Russians say about the call?
The Kremlin put out a summary, too. Moscow emphasized respecting Tehran's right to peaceful nuclear tech, alongside IAEA cooperation.
So Putin and Macron agreed conflicts need political solutions.
Apparently so. Agreed to keep talking. It shows how these major powers are trying to manage huge global threats, even while other geopolitical lines are shifting dramatically.
Just for context, Iran's parliament approved suspending IAEA cooperation back on June 25th, right after that 12-day conflict ended.
Yeah, and it was ratified quickly, and Chancellor Le Drian also mentioned Gaza, saying Paris is talking to Saudi Arabia about restarting that UN conference on the two-state solution.
And the numbers from that recent Iran-Israel exchange are pretty stark.
They are. Haaretz analysis suggested Iran fired over 500 ballistic missiles. Most fell harmlessly, but 36 apparently hit Israeli urban areas.
And Israel, with U.S. help, intercepted about 86%, using around 200 interceptors.
At a cost of roughly $1.5 billion. Just shows the immense cost, financial and logistical, of modern air defense.
Okay, let's shift focus now to Gaza, but looking inside Gaza itself. Some complex internal stuff happening.
Yeah, on top of the food shortages and displacement from Israeli actions, you've got conflict between Palestinian groups now.
The Hamas-controlled Interior Ministry issued an ultimatum to this Bedouin clan leader, Abu Shaba.
Right. He's been openly challenging Hamas rule within Gaza.
Hamas accused his clan of acting against Palestinian interests, calling them traitors.
Pretty much, they set up this revolutionary tribunal, gave him 10 days to surrender or face trial, and they're asking the public to report him.
But he's still at large, believed to be in Rafah, under Israeli control.
That's the belief, yeah. And his group hasn't stayed quiet.
Saw their Facebook post, calling the court order a staging that doesn't scare them.
And sources close to them told Haaretz that Hamas has actually sent elite fighters to try and kill Abu Shaba already.
His group's version is different, though. They told Haaretz they're just a popular force protecting aid convoys from being looted by other groups.
They strongly deny any contact with Israel and claim it's actually Hamas using violence to crush dissent.
It's just another layer of misery and conflict for people already in a desperate situation.
Absolutely. Okay, one more region to touch on, shifting continents to Africa, specifically Mali.
Right. The Malian army announced a major operation, claiming they killed 80 militants.
Yes, in response to a series of coordinated attacks on military posts across the country.
The army spokesman said the attackers suffered heavy losses everywhere they engaged Malian forces. They showed images on state TV.
Slain insurgents, captured weapons, vehicles, motorcycles.
And responsibility for the initial attacks was claimed by JNI.
Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, yeah. The al-Qaeda affiliate in the Sahel, they claimed they hit multiple barracks and positions.
The army said the attacks hit 7 cities across central and western Mali. Places like Dibo, Kayes, Ségou, Niordu Sahel.
And Gogi, Moloto, Niono, more centrally. The key thing the army noted was the use of artillery fire in these attacks.
Which suggests a certain level of coordination and capability for the militants.
Exactly. It fits the pattern we've seen from these jihadist groups in the Sahel, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. Coordinated, multi-point attacks.
And Mali's situation is complex anyway.
Right. Military junta in charge since 2020, fighting jihadists linked to both al-Qaeda and ISIS.
And also dealing with the long-standing Tuareg issue in the north. It's a really tough mix of pressures.
Okay. We've covered a huge amount of ground today. Let's try and pull these threads together.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of disparate things, but are they connected?
We started with the U.S. aid pause impacting Ukraine directly. Then we saw the Germany-UK defense treaty signaling a strategic shift in Europe.
Then that surprising Macron-Putin call focused on Iran's nuclear program. Very intricate diplomacy.
And finally, these often overlooked but intense conflicts, the internal power struggles in Gaza, and the ongoing fight against militants in Mali. What's striking, I think, is how interconnected it all feels, even if indirectly.
How so?
Well, the U.S. aid pause doesn't just affect Ukraine. It might be accelerating that European push for self-reliance we see in the Germany-UK pact.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the France-Russia diplomacy over Iran, it shows how even amidst major conflict like Ukraine, other critical global threats force old adversaries to talk, redrawing lines.
Well, at the same time, you've got these localized conflicts in Gaza and Mali with their own specific dynamics.
Exactly, but even they aren't totally separate. Regional stability, international aid, the flow of weapons, it all connects back to the bigger picture. It's like a complex global web, really.
So what does this all mean? That's the question we always ask. It seems like we're seeing alliances shift, priorities change.
National stockpiles becoming a major factor, diplomatic channels opening in unexpected ways, localized power struggles flaring up.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In a world where these military and diplomatic lines are being redrawn so fast, that's next.
What new forms of international cooperation or maybe competition are going to emerge from all this?
And how is that going to shape global stability in the years ahead?
Definitely something for you or listeners to mull over. A lot to think about.